Also here in Szeged at the Agora Auditorium, where we are organizing the final conference of the SASMOB project. We are still waiting. It's a bit tricky to organize because everyone who is online is getting really, really punctual. But we still got the bad habits that when you come in live, then people are late. So we try to be a bit understandable for those who are just arriving to the room. And in the meanwhile, I would like to ask my colleagues to put up the presentation on the screen, because we would like to ask your active participation at this session, at this work session, which has the name "The Future of Commuting to Work: Tips and Tricks for Employer Engagement." So we are still waiting, and while we are waiting, I would also like to tell you that this event is part of the European Week of Regions and Cities side events network. So we are part of the Conference on the Future of Europe program as well, and also the European Week of Regions and Cities organization. So what I would like to ask all of you, also online and offline, I will come back to this one later, sorry, but try to get your phones out and type in slido.com. It's obviously necessary to do so. And there's the event code, what you can add. But sorry, we will have to go back a little bit to the, I made a mistake because I haven't introduced the panel participants. We've got panel participants online and offline as well. We've got here in the auditorium Antal Gerthais from Mobilissimus Ltd, a mobility expert, and we've got Sándor Nagy, the Vice Mayor of the Municipality of Szeged, and online we've got hopefully Vilmos Bilicki. I haven't seen your camera on, but I've seen he's also member of the SASMOB partnership from the University of Szeged, and he was leader of the IT technology within the project. And we've got Balázs Kabarcs, who was not part of the, Decathlon was not part of the project, but I think it's a very interesting initiative. He's going to talk about that later. Sustainability country leader at Decathlon Hungary. And we also have Philipp Stein. He's also an urbact expert and a UIA expert, not on urban mobility, but on air quality. But they've got a mobility-related project, Cargo Bike, and he's going to talk about that one later. So put up your sliders, put up your phones, get on Slido. There's the event code. You have to put into your phones, and I stopped here, and okay, yes, my phone went to sleep, and I'm not connected to the internet. No, I should be connected to the internet. Okay, here it is. Okay, so the first exercise, while we are still waiting, let's say another 2-4 minutes, is to put in your answers to the question, why commuting matters. So you can type in any answers you think relevant, why commuting matters to cities, to you personally, or also to city leaders, city managers. And let's see how many of you joined us on Slido. So we are still waiting for, let's say, 3 more minutes before we start. Thank you. So, seems we are, quite a lot of us has put our ideas into why commuting matters. And now I would like to ask the panelists to have a short introduction of themselves and define your role in commuting. So what is how do you define your role in commuting? And to make it easy for the first round of discussion, I would like to ask if it's possible for the participants to respond in alphabetical order. So maybe we can ask Vilmos Bilicki, if you are here, to respond to the question.
Yeah. Good morning. I am Vilmos Bilicki from the University of Szeged. Can you hear me? Perfect. So I am here
wait a little bit, because it's a bit too, it's not loud enough for the participants here in the auditorium. Okay, let's try again.
Good morning. I am Vilmos Bilicki. I am an assistant professor at the University of Szeged, and we took part in this project. We was responsible for data collection on the bridge in order to have some insight to the traffic, what's happening on the road. And we were also responsible for collecting the traffic insight for the public transportation vehicles. And where we can see opportunity in the commuting is basically the data sharing. I think the data is very well set. We have to understand what happens, and after we are able to understand, we can also do some actions, we can act on that. So as from the data science point of view, in the commuting, I see a problem what should be solved, and the way how we can solve is to collect information, of course, not only with the sensors, but with collaboration between different partners.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Antal Gerthuis. I'm managing director of Mobilissimus. We are a sustainable urban mobility planning and consultancy company. So in this situation, I would say that my role in commuting is at least threefold. First, I'm a person, an employee. I go to work, so my daily mobility choices have an impact on the traffic situation, on all the impacts that have been mentioned by the participants on the poll. We have seen congestion, we have seen air pollution, we have seen climate, but also time. So this kind of impacts are a mix of impacts on the personal level. I would say my personal choice has an impact on my daily time consumption and how I spend time. It has an impact on the local level, like air pollution, which transport mode I chose, and it has a global impact in terms of climate issues. So this is the first, my personal footprint, so to say. The second is my impact or my role as an employer, because I'm a managing director of a company, so my choice is how I incentivize my co-workers to go to work or not to go to work, maybe work from home. it also has an impact. Even we are a small company, the big picture is built up by a lot of these smaller choices. And the third is the professional level. We as sustainable mobility consultants can support cities and also employers to review their processes, review their incentives, their decisions, and help them to make choices which have a better impact on mobility and on all the factors that mobility influences.
Thank you. No, it's not your turn yet, because I will try to ask, maybe it's going to be difficult, but I'm trying to ask Balázs Kabarc from online.
Yes, hello, good morning for everyone. So yes, I'm Balázs Kabarc, I'm working for Decathlon Hungary. About myself, I'm working for Decathlon Hungary since now 15 years, but I'm the sustainability leader of the company only since beginning of this year. And basically my experience is more coming from the sport booting retail. And this retail activity we are intend to run in a more green way. So this is how I approach the today meeting. Today, yes, and about Decathlon Hungary, how we do it. Basically, we are trying to apply a kind of triple baseline approach by balancing the value creation on the fields of people, planet, and profit. And I have to be clear with that it's often really not easy. And personally, I clearly think that the biggest step we need to make to go forward with the planet part. As a retailer company, as a business unit, I think we are quite strong how we create our profit and how we create value on that part. We often proud on our effect with people, starting with our teammates, but also our customers, to spread, for example, the benefit of sports around the society. But about planet, I think as all of us, we, at least in Decathlon, we are in late. To give you some details how we work on sustainability, basically we work on four major fields. The first one is that we try to measure as precise as possible our today footprint and set up clear targets in line also, for example, with the Paris Agreement goals in order to be able to contribute to the target of having the climate less than 1.5 Celsius degrees of increase. So that's the first thing to measure. The second thing is that we want to educate and communicate. We want to communicate really with an educative approach and to have interaction, firstly with our teammates. So it's first internal and after more and more with our customers as well. The third one is that we really want to transform our business to a more circular economy approach. This is clearly have a strong effect to reduce our footprint. And the fourth one is a kind of mix with our operational footprint to be reduced. And commuting is a part of that. Today, how we observe it, how we measure it, in our estimation, commuting is representing 5.5% of our carbon dioxide footprint of the retail company. I'm saying retail because in Hungary we have retail activity, but the picture is totally different for those countries where we have production. But now I'm speaking about retail. So it's 5.5% of the carbon dioxide coming from commuting. And if I enlarge a little bit the scope, people mobility, including the customers' mobility, represent almost 2/3 of our total environmental footprint. So really, clearly, my role as sustainability leader of the company is to reduce those impacts and find ways to act on people and commuting mobility, both.
Thank you very much. My name is Sándor Nagy, and I am the Vice Mayor of the City of Szeged, and I'm responsible for urban development and specifically mobility issues within the city leadership. And besides the personal aspects that were mentioned by my fellow panelists, the city has a different role or different aspect of commuting, since this is a major part of the transport activity in the city. Our studies show that the trips made in the city, of the trips made in the city, about 20% was going to work, and about 40% is going home. And obviously, that is probably half of that is probably the second leg of the going home part. So almost half of the trips made in the city are related to work. Therefore, probably work-related trips contribute very much to the peak hours traffic, the congestion, and this is something that creates not just pollution, noise, and so on, but waste of time, waste of money, in a sense, in the city, but also that puts a pressure on the city to develop the road infrastructure, to develop the transport infrastructure. Therefore, it is very important to find ways to convince people to use public transportation, to use to cycle, to walk, because those modes of transport consume less space, and therefore, in the big sum, they will consume less time, and therefore, altogether, they will cost less money for us. Obviously, how it is shared among us is not necessarily proportional, but in the end, we should all end up in a better position in the traffic regarding air pollution, regarding noise. So I think that this is the basic motivation behind the city's actions, to try to work together with employers to reduce congestion in the city, reduce air pollution, because the commuting part of the traffic in the city is a major contributor to these problems. Thank you.
It very nicely reflects what you said to the Slido word cloud, which came out that air pollution and congestion came out as the two major factors of why commuting matters. And now I would like to give the floor to Philip Stein from online again.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Szeged, and thank you, Susanna, for inviting me to participate in this. It's a great honor for me to be with you today. I'm from Scotland originally, now based in Belgium, and I'm an urban planner specialized in sustainable mobility management plans and projects. I've worked in the north of France, in Bristol in England, and in many cities here in Belgium, namely Bruges, Brussels, and Leuven as the most important. But I'm also here today representing a colleague project in the Urban Innovative Action Programme, and that is the project being run here by the Brussels Capital Region called Cargo Bike. So if you just bear with me a minute, I'll try and share my screen and just give you some, screen sharing is disabled apparently, yeah? Can I try again? No. Okay, I don't need to the slides, I can tell you about it. The Cargo Bike project is conceived to tackle the poor air quality issue here in Brussels, and by extension, hopefully, to give some sort of good practice and toolbox to other cities also trying to tackle this problem. The idea is to generate a fundamental modal shift, replacing use of private cars and light goods vehicles by cargo bikes, e-cargo bikes and trailers. So it's targeting the whole population, but focuses on two groups with perhaps different needs. So citizens, households, families, the kind of cargo bikes that they might use for relatively short journeys, perhaps, like the school run, shopping, transporting material that is larger than you could do by walking or on public transport. And then professionals, and that's trying to encourage small businesses, contractors, maintenance and repair, supply services, deliveries, to use cargo bikes instead of small vans or private cars. Now, we're really full up, occupied at the moment with testing and training sessions, so that the project's really coming into cruising speed, and we're having professional people testing the types of cargo bike. They get to take them home for 2 weeks, and then we're also evaluating that experience and monitoring their exposure to black carbon. There's also, it's an integrated package, so there's also an element of sharing and loan possibility, subsidy for purchase, and also secure parking, which is becoming one of the really major aspects. It's something that, you know, if we were doing a cloud with our people, that would be something that would be coming up very high on the number of hits. So that's basically it. It's really a quadruple helix partnership, because it involves public authorities, it involves private companies and NGOs, and who are very active in the cycle business, the cycle campaigners. It also has the university involved, and the private companies for parking infrastructure, and car sharing companies who are also going to do bike sharing. And then, of course, the citizens themselves. So hopefully, it's not about commuting exactly, although you could think that the school run is a form of commuting. But it's very complementary, I think, in its objectives to the work that you have been doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Philip. And I think what you said is very important for our next question, because what you said about secure parking is very important indeed, and your personal decision whether you're going to buy a more expensive e-bike or a cargo bike is very much influencing urban planning, because you need to have secure parking in it. So that's again how the personal decision or a company's decision or an institution like a school's decision should have an influence on the urban planning. Okay, now I will have a lot of tasks to do. First of all, I would like to ask everyone online and here in the auditorium as well to raise questions through Slido. So if you have any question regarding what anyone has said, please take out your phones, and maybe my colleagues will be able to put up the Slido code again. So if, yes, this one. So those who joined us later, please go onto slido.com and put in the number of the meeting, and then hopefully there's the question and answer page, which there. So anytime during the meeting, you can raise questions, and also you can vote on other person's questions as well. So that also helps to put the most important questions first, let's say. Okay, so this was one thing. The other thing is somehow, please, those panel participants who are online, just flag if you want to get into the conversation. My colleagues will help me to let you get the floor, and those who are here at present, they definitely can kick me on a foot, so I can give you the floor. But now I would like to make another activity with you, with all the participants, and that's going to be a question. Hopefully it's going to be on yeah, here it is. What are your main factors in deciding how you're getting, oops, a spelling mistake, getting to work? So what are your main factors in deciding how you're going to work or getting to work? It's multiple choice. It's not only one, but you can give in more answers as well. So while you are active, I will be quiet for a little while. So while you are still filling out the questionnaire, I would like to reflect a little bit on the city and industry relationship regarding to urban mobility, because I don't think it's a very new phenomenon that cities and industry or city leaders and industry are cooperating in urban mobility. Maybe, and I'm sure it's not the first, but one of the major factors which influenced how cities look like today started with the Industrial Revolution and the big factories, which started to emerge in the, let's say, early 20th century, late 19th century, which were not only building the factories, but also building houses next to, or the housing estates, workers' communities next to the big factories. So that was also a concept, maybe also to reduce mobility needs. That's the first large-scale, let's say, investments from industrial side. That it's not only the factories were built, but also the houses around, and also the amenities around it. And also, if we think about our common past, it's the socialist times when the big housing estates and the new cities were built, when the driving force was most creating comfort in the housing estates with all the social infrastructure around it, schools and health care and shopping districts. So that was also, in a way, reducing mobility needs, and again, factories and industry and the city cooperated in managing traffic in a way. But now factories are less important in cities. It's more services, more smaller scale employers who work in cities. So I would like to ask you, the panelists, first, that what do you think, what would you expect from a city industry or a city employer cooperation now, let's say in the 21st century? What would be an ideal cooperation? Some of you are after experienced this SASMOB process. Some of you are before, but it's or just from your experience. So, what would be your ideal cooperation? Online, offline. Who would like to start? Okay, go ahead.
I would go on. I just wanted to reflect on this historical flashback you provided at the beginning, that both the mobility habits changed a lot during the time. So as you mentioned, initially, as there were no longer distance commuting options, it was really clear that housing and the workplace were close to each other. And then with the development of transport options, first rather public transport, and interestingly, before the Second World War, also cycling had a quite important role in many European countries. But this already allowed some distance between the home and the workplace. And after the Second World War, there was some difference between the socialist countries and the Western world. So in the socialism, it was very much top-down organized based on public transport. While in the West, the car started to gain more and more popularity, which allowed for longer and longer commuting distances. So this led to where we are now, and after the changes around 1990, the Eastern countries also are catching up quite quick, whether it's good or not. But on the other hand, what I wanted to add, also the institutional setup has changed a lot. So for example, what you mentioned, the traditional factories with the housing estates were usually built by the same corporation. So the same corporation took care of the housing and of the amenities you mentioned. In the socialist period, for example, both the city authorities and both the industries were branches of the state in a way, so the cooperation was very much different. And now we are in the situation that the companies are independent, working on the market. The cities have their own responsibilities, especially on local transport, but I would add also higher levels of government, like regional and state authorities also play a role, especially in intercity transportation. So I just wanted to add this to the context and then let the answers to and others to go into the details.
Okay, I think that big employers and cities have always had cooperation, since all big employer has a problem that the employees has to get to the workplace. So even before SASMOB, there has always been some cooperation regarding how to organize or reorganize, in a case, public transport, where will parking spaces be available. So I think that there has always been a kind of a natural cooperation between these city partners. What changed in this project, I think, is to raise the level of cooperation, to go deeper. And it was possible because many employers realize that they have a role in mobility and its impact. So many employers, many big companies and small companies are aware of the effects of climate change, are aware of the effects of congestion and transport problems in a city. Therefore, they want to do something about it. And this project and this deeper cooperation provided a platform for these employers, companies, institutions, that they could exchange ideas and they could develop new solutions for their problems. And maybe most importantly, the process started with a survey. I don't know how many employers did any surveys before. Obviously, all employers want to have public transportation at the end of the shift if they have industrial activity, but not necessarily wanted to survey their employees, where they come from, what are their preferences, how would they change their habits. So this project allowed us to have deeper knowledge of the problem and to provide some small-scale solutions for these problems. And I think that we have all these materials in the project that show that they were very creative in many ways. So taking part in this project has let loose some amounts of creativity. And what is also very important, that they could talk to each other. So there is a process of sharing experiences. And I wouldn't underestimate the role of the city, or in this case, the project itself, that through this project we could provide some small incentives. These are not big amounts of money, but still it incentivizes the process of developing something new at the workplace. So I think that it is comparing the past 4 years to the previous 400. This is a different level of cooperation, a deeper understanding of each other's problems, and creating better solutions and better kind of cooperations than we had before.
Thank you. I don't know whether our panelists from online, would you like to add something to it? Because afterwards I will ask something from our Vice Mayor here.
Yes, I'd like to come in on this. I think, you know, we've reached a situation where I think people are understanding the principle of the polluter pays. But this element of commuting that you're looking at is kind of tricky, because, you know, in the 9 to 5, the employer is responsible, but what you do to get to work and go home is something individual. But it's not. So there is really a corporate responsibility. In Belgium, since 2004, every company that has more than 100 people working in one location is required to make a company mobility plan. Now, with some very motivated firms and businesses, that has been very effective, but it's, somebody talked earlier, it's very top down. Huh? But a lot of companies, they will make their plan, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it will be implemented in any sense that's interesting to us. So I think that the thing that the Appolgarmester just said about cooperation, and that is for me really important, that outreach from city to company to really understand what are the needs in terms of commuting, and how can that be adjusted to get us to some sort of sustainable alternative. Huh? And I think what is really interesting today is that these needs may, because of what we've experienced in the COVID situation, I don't know if that's the same situation for you in Hungary, these needs may well change quite fundamentally. We're seeing 30% of federal civil servants here are still working at home, even although restrictions were eased. Restrictions are going to come back in, I think. 50% in England of people who are able to work at home have chosen to keep working at home, if possible. In Northern Ireland, the majority of people are saying, we want to work at home. So how much of this will persist if we emerge from the COVID situation, I'm not sure, but it will give us opportunities to think about different alternatives. We have seen, however, and I take the train into Brussels always, but I think when the train has been functioning at full capacity pre-pandemic, I don't think we could get many more people onto the trains to go into Brussels, which was great. I think now you could say it's about 70%. But congestion levels and car use has returned to what it was before. Now that's very strange, but it means, I think, that people who are commuting have gone back to taking the car because they feel safer. They don't want to be on a crowded train in this time. And then the other thing that has also increased because of the recreational aspect is cycling to work, because people learned when they were locked down that one of the things that they could do was get out on their bikes. And of course, e-bike is quite a hip thing here in Belgium. So cycling is also going up. And I think what we've got to do is get out, get to the companies. And I think SASMOB that's what you have done. And I think that's very, very valuable. It's not anymore about the stick. It's carrot and stick we've got to work with, and in cooperation. And I think that's the very interesting aspect of your project. Sorry to be so long.
Thank you. I think what you said that it started from the municipality with an outreach and incentives towards the employers. That's a very interesting side to it. But I don't know, Balázs, would you like to add something from the other perspective? That how can you start from the employer, and what would you expect from a city-employer cooperation?
Yes, thank you for questioning. I think many of you mentioned already that cooperation is existing since a long time. But I think what is very important is that how we start with this cooperation. And for me, it's really about how we share information and exchange. I think you also mentioned this kind of part, particularly at the planning phase. So I think where we can, and which is a common responsibility, and where we can improve to really have better answers to the new kind of needs is to be a little bit more in advance and share already. You mentioned, I think all of you mentioned the needs, the changing needs, also that how we surveying it. We also do surveying it in as an employer, but the question, if we share it within enough, are all the information what we have from our teammates with municipalities, if we really together benefit from those information what we own, each of us. So I think this is one important part where we have room for improvement. So that's one point. The second point is probably a little bit different, or just me experience it since we are located in most of the cases in the suburb. that what I feel that the cooperation needs to be also enlarged, not just between city and employer, but between cities and employers, because simply the mobility, probably it's kind of obvious, but of course the mobility needs doesn't stop at the border of the city. So this is, and we at with our stores, which are really outside of the city or really in the in the suburb, for us it's a very strong issue, and I think here, for example, if we also cooperate like an intercity kind of cooperation, it can have also an improvement. Thank you.
If I can react, thank you, Balázs, for mentioning both the importance of locations. You mentioned that your stores are mostly in suburban locations. And from the SASMOB surveys, we see that the location is an important factor in the commuting, how far people commute and what transport options they have, what transport mode they choose. I would also add to the information sharing. This is, I think, one of the big benefits of the SASMOB project, or more broadly, the cooperation between the city and the employers, is that we have a clear picture now on the mobility habits at the 7 big employers who were partners of the SASMOB project. They cover some 5,000 employees, so quite a number. And this way, we can see in Szeged that the impacts of COVID are the same here as Philip mentioned. So we have data because we could do surveys with both the companies themselves, so they also have some information about how they react, what are their policies, for example, regarding working from home, but also on how the employees themselves make their choices. And actually we have the same impacts here. So the first is a quick shift towards working from home, which happened during the first wave of the pandemic. And the big question is with us, how this will remain with us. What we see is that a partial working from home will be certainly part of the solution with many employers. But there are also big differences between the sectors. For example, in the IT development companies, it's much easier to shift to working from home. It's more complicated in the public administration, and of course, it's mostly not possible in manufacturing or public utilities, where the physical work is much more present. The other thing is that while the overall number of trips has decreased, the shift between transport modes is just the same as Philip described. So public transport lost a lot of passengers due to the anxieties about possible infection, and a shift towards all kinds of private modes happened, which was in a way beneficial if we look at the increasing role of cycling, which has an important share here in Szeged, but also a more negative impact on shifting towards car use, which was quite prominent. Connecting to my previous statement and then finishing, is that the manufacturing companies had still people needing to commute, and these companies have workforce commuting for quite long distances. They have a catchment area which is much wider. So in this case, mostly the car was the option. Bicycle was not convenient for these long distances. So this is what we see from the COVID impacts, and this poses a challenge for the city.
Maybe Vilmos, would you like to add something about the open information and data gathering?
Yeah, I think there are new opportunities. We have talked about the surveys. This is a classical way of information gathering. but there is a social media. Every citizen has mobile phone, so there are many opportunities how one can interact with the companies and how companies can interact with the employees, or how the citizens can be directly targeted or involved. So the crowdsourcing, again, it is a phenomenon which could be applied. So I think there are new challenges and new opportunities, and the IT provides new opportunities. We have heard about the homework, for example. It essentially changes the landscape of the city, I think, for a given work places. But on the other hand, I think we are just started to utilize the opportunities. So we are just on the beginning of the understanding of our opportunities, what we can use. And one opportunity is to, of course, to create so-called data lakes or data store solutions where this information could be exchanged.
Thank you. I think I like the word alliance in this project because it's somehow it's more than cooperation, and it somehow reflects our societies and what we explained about how cities and the different employers can interact. So it's not a one-by-one cooperation or agreements anymore, but it's somehow, yes, it's not an agreement, but it's more an alliance that you try to go forward to the same aim, and it can come from the outreach from the municipality, but it also can come from the employers or from the industry. So I would like to go back to this question that what would you expect maybe after the SASMOB project, or with having the knowledge and having the experience of the SASMOB project, what would you expect from this alliance? Or what would you expect from a city-employer alliance in the future? How would you go forward?
I think, first of all, after the project, there should be no big revolution. We should just continue. And since this is a project, the project has a beginning and an end, and what remains of the project is a very big question. And in fact, it is very important to be able to continue the activities, not necessarily at the level that was financed in the project, but still having cooperation meetings, still having joint actions, still trying to understand each other's point of view, and not just from the city hall, but also between or among the employers. I mentioned it, and I think it is very important that we would like to incentivize this cooperation in the future. So our plan is that from next year, in next year's budget, there is going to be a small fund where we will start an application process, and companies that are part of the alliance that joined and they made the pledge to support sustainable transport will be able to apply for this fund. And as I mentioned, sometimes small incentives may have a big impact, because even if a company has €1 billion revenue, then the local office may have only a small amount of money to provide facilities for cycling, for example, and therefore a small incentive may have a big impact, in the sense that the local manager can say to his or her boss that well, the city funds this partly. We should spend money on it. It is important. So I think that we would like to continue this project in a way, and we would like to look for new partners, because I think that those partners that are part now are the project, and that's 26, I remember, something like that. So the project has grown in these 3-4 years. I think that we have the ability to attract more local employers, because in the past 4 years we were able to prove that it is worth working together with the city, it is worth surveying the employees, what their requests are. And it is beneficial for the employer as well, because now there is a lack of workforce in the labor market. So I think it's from the employer's point of view, it is a kind of a non-financial incentive provided, or perk provided to the employee, that they have facilities for sustainable transport or support for sustainable transport. It can be a kind of a non-financial incentive for the employees as well. So they can keep their employees easier if they have schemes for sustainable transport within the company. So I think that we can continue this project, and I hope that more and more companies will join us.
Okay. Anyone else want to, from the panel, add to this question of what would you expect from a city-employer cooperation? Okay, if not, then I would ask again the audience for a little bit of activity. What would you do to change employers' commuting habits? Whether you are an employee yourself, what you expect the employer to do for you, that's also a question. What would you like to receive? What activities, what programs? But also if you are an employer, what would you add? Homework. What would you do to change employers' commuting habit? Homework. Like to work from home. Okay, I understand. Work from home. I saw there's some school homework to be done. Write an essay on commuting habits. That will be your homework. You can put in more words, so there's a choice of multiple answers as well.
I think this is very interesting. We're seeing a lot of interesting titles there with a mix of stick and carrot, but much more carrot. Huh? And I think we've got to look at putting all the weaponry we can into this mix. And that can be, really simple things, just making sure that the offer of public transport, for instance, to a particular site, and Balázs talked about these suburban sites. In Belgium, we found just where the bus stop would be in relation to a particular firm, quite an important aspect, but that's very banal. When we get to other discussions about financial incentives, I think we also have to look outside the city. What is the governance structure that can maximize the impact? If you look at the German-Austrian situation, for instance, for cargo bikes, the federal government and the national government is providing a grant for purchase of something like 25% of the bicycle cost price, the cargo bike cost price. Huh? But then cities like Graz and Bremen and Munich are also putting in another couple of hundred euros to that pot. And I think that kind of cooperation through the whole governance structure with the companies involved can be a win-win. And what Vilmos said, I completely agree with. All this has to be done on the basis of really, really good data. We really have to know what the situation is now, not just what we think it is. And that seems to me very important. And I think we have that great opportunity in terms of crowdsourcing today.
Thank you, Philip. Very valuable. And what I just looked at the word cloud, and I see a lot of individual solutions and a lot of solutions pointing towards public transport. So how would you manage this public transport issue as a city manager? Because I think it's at least the whole SASMOB started with the issue of it's difficult to finance public transport, and money for public transport is getting less and less or going down. But seems there is a need for it, but at the same time we need comfort and a door-to-door solution. I feel some kind of contradiction here, at least financially.
There are a lot of pressures on public transport, and there was a sliding loss of passengers. I mean, 1-2% every year, but it has been accelerated in the past 2 years. So the pressure on public transport has increased, and indeed, one of the reasons to start this project was to find ways to promote public transport. There is no big city or medium-sized city without public transport. In many cities, it is still the biggest part of mobility, and if you think about it, is the service of last resort in transportation. So if your car is broke, if your bicycle is broke, what can you do? So you will ride a bus or a tram. So the role of public transport, I think, is many times underestimated in cities, and because of this, we have to provide this service, and the service has to have a acceptable level. I mean, if you have in a neighborhood one bus every hour, that is not a real service. That is just for, I don't know, for show, or for only people who has a lot of time. So it should have a certain level that provides a real opportunity for people who want to go to work, for example. They shouldn't wait an hour in a bus stop. So it is a big challenge for cities because we were losing passengers and therefore customers who pay for the service. In Hungary, we were losing financial subsidies that were provided by the government. So, and we still have to provide the service. And in fact, we still have to develop the service because people's expectations are increasing. It was Szeged, the first city in Hungary to provide Wi-Fi on all vehicles. We have card payment, ticket vending machines on all vehicles. So you have to be, these vehicles has to be more comfortable. The service has to be more accessible to be used by people because we compete with the car. We now compete with the rentable e-scooters that has very easy, that very low barriers to entry. Therefore, it is very easily used, and it will compete with the public transportation. So it is a big challenge for cities, and on the other hand, it is a very important service. So, and one of the big challenges is that we see in this word cloud references to cycling. In a way, cycling can be promoted very easily. It is healthy. It is youngish to cycle. It is fun, and so on. So there are a lot of positive attributes to cycling. On the other hand, if you ask people what their opinion about public transportation is, they will say that it is crowded, always late, maybe it is the vehicles are dirty, and so on and so on. So the competition is not real. The image is very bad. So you have to do work on it to find ways to promote public transportation, because otherwise I think it is really a good service, even if it is sometimes late. So it's still there. The buses are coming, so you can rely on it most of the time. So I think that it is a big challenge for us, and what we see is that at least there are very interesting problems. You can see in the word cloud that free transport pass should be provided, or monthly ticket should be provided. Well, okay, but if an employer buys a free monthly ticket for the employee, in Hungary they have to pay an extra tax. And if they provide a free parking space, they don't have to pay an extra tax. So that is a very strange problem, and I think that there are many limits on our actions, and if these barriers were removed, it would be much easier for the employers to provide benefits relating to public transport. We obviously have to do things like the ones that were mentioned before, like providing a new bus stop if necessary, that is within walking distance, or there is a new industrial facility and we had to start a new the bus service has to be extended at a new time to provide the transport for the people who want to go home after the shift. So you have to be aware of these changes that are required by people, but it is a big challenge. And I think it's not only in Szeged, it is a big challenge everywhere in Europe now.
We at Mobilissimus are providing public transport planning also for different cities. And what we see is that it's often the case that new industrial areas emerge, new companies arrive, while the public transport networks often don't follow these developments. So when we prepare or where we plan a new network and timetable structures, I would say the minimum level of cooperation we would expect between the city and the employers is the exchange of information, which Balázs also mentioned already, is to discuss what are the needs, how many people work in each shift, how to match the starting and ending times of the shifts and the timetables. I would say this should be done. It's often still not the case. So we try to move into this direction. And a more developed way of cooperation could be agreements between the companies and the city, where, for example, the city commits to provide a higher level public transport service, while, for example, the company agrees to buy a certain contingent of public transport passes for their employees. It can be even on a discounted price, so with a quantity discount, but we see some opportunities in these kinds of cooperations. Of course, as Sándor mentioned, there is also a role from the national level. So these barriers he mentioned are there. For example, if there is a national rule which says that cities, due to the COVID situation, cannot change public transport tariffs, then this kind of new tariff structures are not possible. At least this is the current case in Hungary. But I would also like to add two positive examples reacting to what Philip said before. First is that in Hungary now the national government provides a grant for electric bikes and electric cargo bikes also. This has been an initiative by the Hungarian Cyclist Club, and it's an ongoing program now. And also from next year, there will be a small change in the taxation rules, which allows companies to provide company bicycles under more favorable taxing conditions than before. So there is some change also on the national level, even if still there are a lot of barriers.
I would like to ask our online participants, maybe would like to add something?
I just want to, join to the previously told parts that I totally agree that we have these barriers and there are some kind of contradiction between those financial solutions, how we today, what is our attitude, common attitude to the different kind of means of mobility. But I think we have a common responsibility. Of course, we have on country level, on governmental level, on municipality level, and on company levels as well. But I think this is the way. So we need to give advantages to the more green means of mobility, bikes and transportation. I heard that it was mentioned by Sándor that it's difficult to finance the public transport. I totally understand this. On the other hand, when we see the parts, what is the price of the mobility by individual mobility by car, we don't really see that it's too difficult to finance this. And probably we can distribute better our financial resources, both on municipality and company level. So, for example, as a company, I think we have also a responsibility to give advantages to our teammates and to help them better choose those means of transport which are better for the environment. And I think many of this is why I also put to the word cloud these advantages, because I think this is the crucial part. And what I observe also today that we see, for example, the fuel price is increasing, and here there is a quick reaction that, okay, could be the good solution is to freeze the prices of the fuel. Here, when fortunately, or at least now, after a long time, probably the carbon price would be naturally built into these means of transport. And here we also need to make the step on the other parts as well. And we as a company also feel this difficulty, especially with taxation, which was already mentioned. But we should not hide ourselves between those difficulties. We need to do the effort and to invest. And I feel this responsibility as a company as well. Thank you.
Sometimes I feel that, first of all, if you want to ask questions, please do so on Slido. What I would like to add that sometimes we have to make ourselves uncomfortable decisions. And it's also like on a personal level. And I think it's the same also with the mobility on a large level. What I would like to say with this, that, for example, if I decide to live in a nice family house somewhere on the suburbs, that's a choice, that's a decision which I made, but it will also have an impact on my mobility habits. If I decide to live in a condominium, in a house with more flats in it, then it's a decision. Maybe I will not have my own garden, so I will have to share not only the public transport or the transport mean, but also have to share the garden with others. But at the same time, it will be easier for me to use public transport, to go by bike, to have a sustainable mode of transport. And it's also, again, maybe uncomfortable, and it's also how much the different disciplines interact to each other. My favorite issue is that because the educational system is not functioning well, let's say, in a city, and I choose a school where I put my children to, far away from my home, that will also generate a lot of traffic. So if you have a very good educational system, a very equal educational system throughout the city, that will also reduce mobility needs. So there's a lot of connections between the different fields that also comfortable and uncomfortable decisions has to be made, also at a personal level. I don't know whether someone from the... Okay, that's...
I would add to that, Susanna.
Okay, go ahead.
Thing that interested me in the cloud was also somebody wrote less company cars. And that's quite a controversial element. Here in Belgium, company cars make up 48% of the vehicle park. I find that quite a staggering figure. I don't doubt, and it's clear that company cars are necessary for certain occupations. But a large percentage of that 48% is a substitute for wages, in fact. It's a perk. And I think we do have to ask ourselves, is that something that really can continue? But the obstacles to changing that politically and in terms of government are enormous. But it is having an impact, it's clear.
I think that there are some good examples within SASMOB project as well to change habits, and in this sense, company habits, giving out mobility incentives towards car usage. One of our companies has changed a little bit. Just it's Evosoft, and I had a great conversation in the summer that the only thing they changed is that they made a request for parking lots a bit more difficult for the employers, which already reduced the level of usage of this company benefit. So it's also a little bit of administrative burden on the side of the employees already made the change. So that's again a little bit uncomfortable, to make it uncomfortable, and that helped sustainable decisions. Okay, so what I wanted to ask you, all of you, is imagine your, let's say, dream project. Well, all of you work in some way with mobility, but what would be your next, maybe personal and also business level goal in mobility, or like a project, a dream project, something what you would like to do in your work, in your personal life, some changes. Full stop. Who would like to start? Who would like to start? Okay, I will. If no one, then I will press a little bit, because on a company level, an employer level, maybe it's still easier to work than on the consumer level. And I was very much, it stuck into my mind what Balázs just said, that 2/3 of carbon footprint comes from the customers who goes to the facilities, goes to the shops. So is there anything, any ideas, any good practices from Europe, maybe, Philip, from you, or any alliances working on consumer traffic as a next step? Whomever.
I would like to add to that and then pass it on to Balázs. So Balázs, be prepared. I would say it is really important, the location of the stores, and also the concept on how much they are based on individual car approach and car transport of the goods procured to home, or how much the stores move closer to the people. I mean, city centers, central locations, but with less car accessibility, which would in many cases also go hand in hand with deliveries. So I would be interested in, Balázs, what is your approach at Decathlon about that? I know you have a few stores also downtown Budapest, so what are your experiences and what is your approach?
Just a short question back now. You mean that what our approach about proposing to the people not the accessibility in the suburb, but more in the city center, or via our online channels? If you meant that.
My question would be, for example, if you plan to open more stores in city centers, where people can maybe have a look, try out, and then order online delivery, or what your numbers say. Would it be helpful? And what is your approach to this?
Okay. Thanks. First of all, in Hungary today, it's a kind of difficulty for us. I mean, in this meaning, because our, let's say, physical expansion is almost over, or we can say it's over in Hungary. So we are quite well covered by stores all around Hungary. Of course, if we would open still stores, probably it would be more close to city centers. But my answer is more that it's not very much probable that we will open classic stores, at least not in a big number, as we did in the previous, let's say, 15 years since we have activity in Hungary. So that's the first point. On the other hand, what we see that the habits of the customers are also changing. It's not just about teammates with commuting, but it's somehow the same with the customer habits. So when we see how the people are doing their purchases, it's more and more online, and they are less. I'm not saying that they are less willing to travel, because it's not true in this meaning. But also kind of mix, like for the teammates or for the employees, when they choose home office or a mixed home office and physical in the office, the customers are doing the same. So I think for this part, for example, being delivered, or the online part of the business, is the part of the solution. It's a part of how we want to run the business in the future. On the other hand, clearly, it's not our business interest to make the people being far from or not to come to our stores. So we would be happy to still welcome customers in a large number to our stores. So this is why with the people mobility, for us, it's a little bit the same issue as commuting. We need to provide also accessibility to our customers better, in a better way with other means of transport. Fortunately, we are in a sporting good market. So in this way, for example, we do sell bikes, and we do sell electric bikes as well, which means that probably our customers inside our customers, there are more bikers than for another retailer. So probably for us it's a little bit easier, but I can tell you that it's not easy at all. So it's a part of our footprint, the customer travels, which is probably the most difficult to influence, because in the end it will be individual choice how they come to our stores. I don't know if I give answer to your question.
Yeah, thank you. That was what I meant. And it's interesting to see how it practically works, what are the limitations, the opportunities. So really thank you for your answer.
Okay, just to go further, would more public transport useful in these outlets, to have more public transport available, or quicker, or something like that? Would that help?
You still mean for Decathlon, or?
Yeah, for Decathlon, for the retailers in the suburbs.
For sure, I think.
That's not an option.
Coming back to the first word cloud, what you created, or it was not a word cloud, but more a choice of answers. To be honest, I was a little bit surprised that I think it was kind of 20% of the answers saying that I choose the mean of mobility by comfort. And my personal conviction is that it's underestimated. So the choice of comfort is, in my mind, it's higher for the people when they choose how they commute or how they come to our stores as well. So in this meaning, if we give a better accessibility and we more break the barriers in front of also, for example, in front of public transport or coming by bike and so on, it will help because in each case, when I see a barrier in front of me, when I choose a bike or when I choose public transport, it is reducing my feel of comfort. It will be always easier to sit in the car and just drive because it depends only on me. But if there are proper bike routes, for example, to the stores, and if the retailer provides me a secure place to put down my bike, or if I have accessibility, easy and quick accessibility to the stores and to my working place by public transport, I will more probably I will more choose this option.
Okay, thank you. And there is a question on the screen, because we covered more or less the first question, what tools do employers have to support sustainable commuting? The second word cloud was very much similar on that question. The second question says, is there data available how far the pandemic changed commuting habits? Despite employer public transport promotion measures are introduced, people may fear more to use public transport. Who would like to answer this one? Maybe Vilmos? Do you have some data on that, or you more? Okay.
Yeah, I will start and then maybe Vilmos can add some more detailed data. But basically we see, as I mentioned, that there was a shift from public transport to both individual car use and also towards a smaller extent cycling and walking, besides working from home. So as a result, cycling has increased in, I would say, all of the cities we know. For example, in Budapest, we did a study based on bicycle counters that due to this COVID and all the connected restrictions, etc., cycling has increased by some 30%, and it seems to keep on. So this is a positive impact. But on the other hand, car use very quickly returned to the pre-COVID levels, and now it's sometimes even higher. While public transport suffers in many cities, so it's often like 70–75% of the passengers use public transport compared to pre-COVID levels. That's the generic picture, and I don't know if Vilmos or Sándor can add something.
Just one addition to that this spring we had a survey, and most of the car users, almost half of the car users said that they don't want to change back. And that is a bit frightening. I mean, so we understand that some people fear of COVID and they want to keep safe, though statistics say that people don't get ill on public transportation. But anyway, we understand that, but they will keep driving cars, and in the long term that hurts, obviously.
Okay, if Vilmos is not adding to this data business, then I would like to stay a little bit with COVID, because I think mobility was one of the areas of public services which changed most due to COVID, except maybe the health sector. And it changed the need for commuting, and it also changed the need for office spaces, and also changed timing of commuting, when we go, and also the rush hour peaks changed maybe a little bit. And also the preferences for commuting, but I would like to ask you, because I'm really interested, and maybe mostly from the mobility experts, that is it possible that the COVID and the results of the mobility changes we had due to COVID and also from home working and everything, that our perception of commuting changed, that what we expect from commuting, so like the first poll, that what are the major issues when you think about commuting has changed. So for example, comfort is not that much the first issue now, but there are more important, or just shifted a little bit the perception.
I would just like to add that Balázs also mentioned that it's a bit surprising that comfort gets so few mentions, and I agree with that it's a surprise. And for me, it was also a surprise that health got relatively high, because traditionally health is mentioned in connection with physical activity in this kind of surveys. So it's usually that, okay, I'm cycling because it's healthy, or I do some exercise. But in the meantime, I realized that COVID certainly has an impact. So it's a new factor, a new part of how we perceive health as important in mobility. But on the other hand, I would be a bit more cautious about building on this survey, not only because it's a limited number of people who responded, but we also see from pilots, for example, in Sweden, that these surveys not always reflect the actual real motivations behind personal choices. So even people tend to overemphasize health and sustainability, etc. But when it comes to actual decisions, especially on the longer term, like the choices every day, day after day, then it comes back to this speed and comfort, how convenient is it to take. So it's just a bit, I would say we should be a bit cautious about drawing very big conclusions from such a survey. Maybe one more point to add, if I already have the word, is that beyond these shorter-term choices on which transport mode I choose, I'm afraid that COVID has higher or more long-term choices, for example, in terms of choosing locations of housing. Which means that, for example, if I can count on a longer term on a partial working from home, I can count on the longer term that I only need to travel to the office 2 times a week, then maybe it's easier to choose a home farther from my workplace, like in the suburbs or even some more distant recreational area, and then have fewer commutes but longer commutes, which on the weekly average they add up to the same time or same distance commuted, and finally the traffic levels will remain the same.
But maybe these travel levels will be in a different geographical pattern. So maybe the city centers, or maybe the big megapolises will be less pegged, and the more regional centers would get stronger.
I would say it's more like a sprawl, rather. So I have a less optimistic view on this. So it's like people can choose more remote homes, which are, of course, probably very nice natural environment. But on the other hand, the trips get much more dispersed and much more complicated to be covered by public transport service, for example. So that's a challenge, certainly, ahead of us.
This is something we're also seeing in Belgium, Susanna, that middle class is raising the interest to have detached homes in suburban or further out areas. And I think in all these things that we've talked about, also in terms of e-commerce and what you're saying about the need for perhaps less office space or business space in central areas, this is all going to have trickle-down effects if it persists. And there is undoubtedly a change in perceptions through the whole population. And we can make moment studies now to say what we've discovered about changes in modal shift or changes in use of particular transport modes. But I think we're in such a dynamic situation that we've really got to keep on top of monitoring exactly what is happening as we move forward. People will make different choices, but how durable will that be in the longer term? And I think that's an enormous challenge for us now, but also represents an opportunity to perhaps reset and find that better mix of transport choices that we really need to get to if we want sustainable cities and good air quality.
Thanks, Philip. And if we are talking about the future, I know that Sándor has to leave 10 minutes earlier, and maybe we also going to finish a little bit earlier. I would like to ask a last round of questions from all the participants, thanking for your time and your valuable input to this workshop conversation. And it's just a very, very easy question to the future. What do you expect to be the biggest change from now in maybe 10 years in terms of maybe mobility or just how the city is going to work? So what is your expected biggest change from now on?
I think there is going to be a pressure from the side of personal mobility choices. I mean, we see that the rentable e-scooters are becoming popular in Szeged, and I think that that will trigger a wave of personal e-scooter buying. So people will use more e-scooters than before, because it is going to be cheaper and cheaper and can replace either cycling or walking, or hopefully sometimes car use. So I think that is going to be a trend, and I think that we will have to maintain this struggle to keep public transportation a viable option for the citizens of the city. And in the meantime, I got a dream project that we couldn't answer. The dream project is to, if I have no financial limits, is a high-level public transportation in my city or in our cities that is very timely, that is low-floor, air-conditioned, Wi-Fi, very comfortable, and financially available for the people, so they don't have to pay some high fees to use it. So that would be a dream project for me. And I think that would be very beneficial for the citizens, and that would change this argument that we are talking about the struggle we will have in the coming 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe online, Vilmos, you also wanted to add something to the data.
Yeah, but now let's talk about the future. I think the self-driving cars, shared and self-driving cars will change the traveling behavior. Of course, it is not a very close future, but in the 15 years or 20 years from now, I think it will happen. Shared cars with self-driving capabilities.
Okay, that's your future. Philip, Balázs, maybe?
I think the biggest part was already mentioned, and I agree with it that first of all there will be always a need, I think, for the individual commuting and individual traveling, which will obviously change how I can access to it. So, for example, electronic mobility with scooters and also with bikes probably will have a bigger share in the choices than what we have today. I also agree with the shared mobility, which I don't know if it will be the self-driving cars or not, but for sure that how I can share and not own the mobility. And I would like to add the third point is that I expect that the need of the combination of those means of mobility will probably also grow. I think before it was mentioned several times that if we are traveling in larger distances, how is it not possible by public transport, by more moving to the suburb and so on? And I think today we cannot really, we can less generalize the need of the concrete travel, also for one particular individual that one day I need this, and for example, I'm in a home office and I just need to take the kids to the school, and the other day I need to travel totally other distances. So in this case, I need to also combine somehow my means of mobility with public transport, with my scooter, with my bike, with shared mobility, and also with my car. So also, I think we need to give answers to the possible combinations as well. Thank you.
I like the idea of Vilmos. Maybe it will even be air taxis by that in 15 years' time. I don't know, but if I'm realistic, I think in the shorter term, we're going to see change, and change in a good sense in terms of our air quality problems, because the vehicle market is going to be electric, it's going to be hydrogen, it's going to be non-fossil fuel, and that's a big plus for us. But it means we're not finished. And Balázs talked about the comfort aspect. It means congestion will not be finished unless we take measures and action, because the car remains as the individual solution, allows people to, and that was in your surveys very clear, to multitask, go to work, come back, do shopping, collect the kids, take the kids to school in the morning. You know, these kind of things that are more difficult to do with public transport and with, so we've still got to keep on top of this, I think, moving forward. And I think the situation is also, in Belgium, for instance, why did the train for the ExpressNet become really capacity full? I think because we'd reached a point where driving into the city became uncomfortable. It took too long. You were sitting in a traffic jam and you can't do anything. You're completely unproductive at that time. And then the balance went the other way. And that seems very interesting to me. Are we going to go back to that situation that we've got to find again? Is it an hour and a half I'm prepared to sit in the car to do 40 kilometers to the city every day, going and coming back? Or am I going to take the train that is there and I park my car at the station and the train is there in 20 minutes? These are interesting challenges, I think, still for the future.
Thank you. And before I give you the floor, created an idea in me, what you said, Philip, that because what we can do is create congestions for the car traffic by urban design. This is what's going on right now, having lanes for buses and all the stuff. But it has very little, or the difficulty with it is the political support of the citizens. So if we come back to the surveys, what you just said, Antti, about the Swedish survey, that people tend to put their wishes into the surveys instead of what they really do. But if if we manage to change their dreams, the wishes that they expect themselves to do, then maybe we are able to change the political support for this urban change, the urban design, which can create congestion and can make the car traffic more uncomfortable. So it's your turn now.
Yeah, I agree with you that raising this kind of public support towards sustainable mobility measures, whatever they be from this wide range of possible carrots and sticks, it's very important. As a concluding remark for your last question, I would say what I expect, the biggest change for the coming decade is constant change. So my experience is that before COVID, it seemed like things are quite stable. Of course, there were changes, there were trends, but it was a bit somehow, you could know what you expect. But now there are a lot of processes going on where we have ideas what outcomes they could have, but we are not really sure. I would say there are big pressing challenges like the climate change. We have new technologies emerging. Some of them were mentioned by our fellow panelists. And there are changes in individual choices or preferences facilitated by COVID. And COVID itself was a surprise, and we don't know what other surprises to expect. So what I want to say with this, that we will need better and more up-to-date data to monitor what's going on in terms of actual traffic, but also in terms of people's preferences. We would need creativity, personal efforts, both from cities and consultants and academics and employers. And we would also need more cooperation between all these actors to be able to adapt and react on these uncertainties and constant changes.
Thank you. That was a good final speech. And I would like now to thank everyone who participated in this workshop online or in presence, your attention, and especially, someone asked the question, wow, is it a valid option that the city steps in the electronic car sharing business, establishment of a public transport company buying and operating rentable electronic cars? Wow, that is a question. Maybe want to answer before I just close the session, or Philip or Antti, who wants to answer?
I think it's possible, but there are different models on this. It's usually not the city itself operating, but it can define car sharing as a public service and then have a tender for an operator to run it. So in principle, it's possible. It's a question if it really fits into the local sustainability goals, or it's more left to the market to take care about this service.
Okay, thank you. So I would like to thank also the panelists to participate and share their ideas. And I also would like to congratulate to all the SASMOB partners for their efforts during the last 3 years. And I would like to wish you a good alliance in the future. Thank you.